I've always thought I knew my wife pretty well. We'd been together for nearly 10 years, shared everything from bad habits to dreams for the future. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Or so I thought. That illusion shattered the day I found out she'd been cheating on me, and it was during the one moment I believed she'd be most genuine, my father's funeral. It happened so fast I still can't quite process it. That morning I was a wreck, cold, numb, and exhausted from days of crying. The funeral was a blur of black suits and muffled sobs. My mind kept circling back to my dad, wishing I could have just one more moment with him, one more chance to tell him I loved him. I remember feeling my stomach twist as I looked around, expecting my wife to be nearby, holding my hand or at least standing close by. Instead, she was nowhere in sight. That's what set off the alarm bells. I caught a glimpse of her at the reception later that day. She was laughing with a man I'd never seen before, leaning in a little too close, brushing her hand on his arm. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe he was a relative or a friend she'd known forever. But her eyes flicked away as soon as she saw me watching. Her face went blank like she'd been caught in a lie. I decided to check her phone that night. I'd never done that before, but I felt a strange, urgent pull. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, and what I saw made my stomach churn. Text messages, flirtatious, suggestive, and intimate between her and that same guy. The conversations were filled with inside jokes, claims of missing each other, and plans to meet up soon. She lied about where she'd been, told me she was visiting her sister that day. Every fiber of my body was screaming. How could she lie about something so huge? Why was she hiding this? More importantly, what else had I missed? I sat there in the dark, the phone's glow illuminating my face, my palms slick with sweat. My head was pounding with questions I couldn't answer. That night I couldn't sleep. The images kept flashing, her laughing with him, the way her eyes darted away when I looked at her voice on those texts. It was like I'd been living next to a stranger all this time. I kept asking myself, how well did I really know her? Did I ever really know her at all? Or was I just fooling myself into believing we were something real? I told myself I'd confront her, but I didn't know how. I felt betrayed, furious, and deeply hurt. The worst part, I didn't even have concrete proof that she'd been unfaithful during the funeral itself, only her lies, her sneaky texts, her evasiveness. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she'd used that day to hide her affair. It made me wonder if she'd been lying about everything else, if she'd been pretending all along. I started to piece things together. Small clues like her strange mood swings around certain days, or the way she'd avoid talking about her work colleagues. But this was different. She'd been lying to my face, right there, in the aftermath of my father's death. It felt like a punch to the gut, and all I could do was sit there, feeling like I'd been punched, trying to breathe through the pain. That night I stared at the ceiling, feeling my fists clench involuntarily. My mind kept circling back to her lies, her sneaking around, and the way she'd betrayed me when I was most vulnerable. I wondered how long she'd been doing this and if she ever truly loved me, or if I'd been living a lie too. I didn't sleep much after that, just lying there, feeling my world crumble piece by piece. All I knew was the truth was finally out. The question was, what do I do now? I've spent days planning my next move, something calculated, something that would set her straight. But I wasn't sure how far I was willing to go, or whether I could even trust myself to do it right. The most unsettling part, I still couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been blind all along, that this was just the beginning of a long, painful journey. And honestly, I didn't know if I had the strength to face what was coming next. The next morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach that refused to loosen. The weight of everything hit me like a ton of bricks. I kept replaying that night's discovery, her texts, my gut-wrenching realization that I'd been blind too. Her lies all along. My first instinct was to confront her right then and there, but I knew better. This wasn't just a moment of anger or heartbreak. It was a carefully constructed puzzle I needed to piece together, and rushing in would only make things worse. I decided to act cold, calculated. I spent the day going through every detail, every possible piece of evidence I could find. I checked her social media, her emails, her phone logs. I needed to confirm my suspicion that she'd been lying not just about that day but for a long time. The more I dug, the more I found. Hours later, I uncovered a pattern of secrecy, messages hidden, locations she never mentioned, and even receipts from restaurants she claimed she never visited. While I was sorting through her digital life, she was oblivious, going about her day as if nothing had changed. But I noticed her avoiding me, her eyes flickering away when I made eye contact, her voice slightly sharper when she answered questions. Something was shifting, and I knew I had to be ready. That evening, I finally confronted her. I sat her down in the living room, the air thick. With unspoken tension, the silence was deafening. Then I finally spoke, my voice low but steady. "You lied to me about where you were yesterday. I found the messages, those suggestive texts. Care to explain?" She looked caught off guard, her face draining of color. She hesitated for a second, then started to deny it, but I wasn't having it. I pulled out the screenshots I'd kept, laying them on the table like evidence. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked at them, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Tell me," I pressed, "were you with him during my father's funeral?" She looked away, her voice trembling. I was just talking to a nothing else." "No, I saw the messages. You lied about being with your sister, didn't you?" Her eyes welled with tears, but I wasn't about to back down. I needed her to know I wasn't playing games anymore. "You betrayed me in my worst moment." "I don't even know who you are anymore," I said softly, but with enough venom to make her flinch. She broke down then, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. That's what she always did, plead and cry until I felt guilty. But I'd had enough of her lies, her manipulations. I promised myself that I wouldn't let her manipulate my feelings anymore. I knew I had to do something drastic, something that would send a clear message. I was done. I spent the next few days quietly gathering everything I needed for my plan. I wanted her to realize that her betrayal wouldn't go unpunished, that the truth would come out in a way she wouldn't see coming. I knew I had to be smart about it. I couldn't just blow up and scream like some fool. I needed to make her see the damage she'd done, step by step, without giving her the chance to spin her lies again. I started by tracking her phone, her movements, her schedule. I wanted to know exactly where she went and who she met. I also made copies of all the evidence I had, screenshots, receipts, messages. My goal was to lay everything bare, but in a way that she wouldn't be able to deny or dismiss. The plan was simple in theory but ruthless in execution. I was going to confront her with undeniable proof, public, irrefutable, and then let her see the fallout for herself. I wanted her to understand that I knew that I was no longer blind, that I had the upper hand now. I remember the moment I finalized the plan, sitting in my apartment, feeling my palms sweat and my heart pound. I was about to cross a line, but I told myself it was justified. She'd betrayed me during my father's funeral. She lied about her whereabouts, lied to my face. No more excuses, no more hiding behind tears or apologies. The next step was clear. I would show her everything, confront her directly, and then walk away forever. I didn't want to ruin her exactly. I just wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, how deeply she'd hurt me, how much I'd trusted her, only to be betrayed so cruelly. And as I sat there planning, I realized one thing. I was done being the victim. It was time to take control, to reclaim what little dignity I had left. That's what I was preparing for now, an end and a new beginning, one way or another. That evening, I set everything in motion. I didn't want her to have a clue. I was onto her, so I kept my distance, acting normal, even friendly. I had to appear unbothered as I gathered all the digital evidence, the receipts, everything. I made sure I had enough to tear down her stories once and for all. The plan was simple but cruelly effective. I was going to confront her with everything, show her she wasn't fooling anyone anymore. I arranged to meet her at a neutral place, a coffee shop she liked but wouldn't suspect. I made sure I had all the evidence printed and saved on my phone, screenshots of her messages, her lies, the receipts from the places she'd claimed to be at but weren't. The day arrived and I felt that familiar knot tighten in my stomach. I ordered a coffee, sat at the corner table and waited. Nervous, yes, but determined. When she showed up, her face was already tense, like she knew she was in trouble. "Hey," she greeted, trying to sound casual. "What's up?" I looked her right in the eyes and slid my phone across the table. "I want to talk about yesterday," I said calmly, but my voice was firm. What were you really doing? Who were you with? She hesitated, then reached for her bag as if trying to hide something, but I was quicker. I pulled out my phone and pressed play on the screenshots, letting her see her own lies displayed for her. Her face paled. That's not what it looks like, she mumbled, fidgeting nervously. No, it's exactly what it looks like, I snapped. You lied about being with your sister. You were with him, weren't you? She looked away, silent, her hands trembling now. I pressed on. You cheated on me during my father's funeral. Do you even care how much that hurts? She finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice breaking. I didn't mean to hurt you, I was lost. I leaned forward. Lost? You were lost enough to lie, to sneak around, to betray everything we had. That's not lost. That's selfish. That's cruel. Her tears turned into quiet sobs. I knew I could keep going, tear her apart with words, but I decided against it. This was enough. She needed to see the damage she caused. That was the point. I got up slowly, feeling a strange mixture of relief and anger. You lied to me for months, I said quietly, and I can't trust you anymore, not after this. I left her sitting there, crying, knowing I'd just delivered what I hoped was the final blow. Walking away from that, I felt a strange calm. I didn't celebrate yet. I knew this was just the beginning. But at least now I had the proof, the clarity. She couldn't deny it. The truth was out and undeniable. That night I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd finally taken control of my life again. I turned the betrayal back on her, and it felt like I was finally standing tall. I couldn't say I was happy, but I was free, and that mattered more than anything. I knew I'd have to face the fallout soon, but for now I was done hiding from the truth. Tomorrow I'd decide what came next. For tonight I just let myself breathe. I'd done what I needed to do. I'd shown her I was serious, that I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. And that was a start. The morning after that confrontation, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity mixed with dread. I had the evidence. I'd laid everything bare, and she'd been crushed under the weight of her own lies. But I knew the hardest part was still ahead, the fallout, the unraveling that was about to follow. I spent the day carefully planning what I'd do next. I knew I couldn't just walk away without leaving a trail of consequences. Her life, her lies, had to come crashing down in a way she couldn't twist or spin. I didn't want to destroy her exactly, but I needed her to feel the pain she'd inflicted on me. That meant I had to be smart, methodical. I started by calling a divorce attorney. The moment I dialed, my voice felt steady, even if my hands trembled. I explained everything: her betrayal, the evidence I had, my decision to end things. The lawyer listened carefully, then outlined the legal steps. I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge's sake. I just wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions. But I wasn't just planning to file papers. No, I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd lost. I decided I'd reveal her affair to her family and her friends, people she trusted who might have even suspected she was hiding something. I wanted her to feel exposed, vulnerable, and powerless. That evening I made a plan. I'd send her a message, just enough to make her realize I knew everything. No empty threats, no shouting, just facts. I would tell her I was divorcing her, that I had proof of her infidelity, and I'd post a subtle hint on social media, enough to make her uncomfortable. Before I did that, I sat quietly, feeling the heavy knot in my stomach again. I remembered her crying in the pleading for forgiveness, promising she'd change, but I knew better now. She was a liar, a manipulator who'd betrayed me when I needed her most. That night I drafted the message. It was straightforward, to the point. I told her I knew about her affair, that I had evidence, and that I was done, that I was filing for divorce. I added a line about how she'd lost everything by choosing to cheat during my father's funeral, a moment when I was at my most vulnerable. I sent it just before midnight. No reply came, but I didn't expect one. I knew she would be devastated, perhaps angry, maybe even try to spin her way out of it. That wasn't my concern anymore. I'd done what I could. The next few days were a blur of preparations. I arranged for the divorce papers, made copies of all the evidence, and prepared to hand everything over. I wanted her to know I had her cornered. I also reached out to her closest friends, friends she'd confided in, who might have suspected her cheating but didn't have proof. I sent them the screenshots and told them what I'd found. Watching her unravel was strangely satisfying. She was acting normal around me, but I saw the cracks. The way she hurried past her phone or kept her eyes averted when I looked at her, I could tell she was starting to realize I knew everything. One evening, she finally broke down completely. She tried to deny it all, but I just looked at her and said, "You lied. You betrayed me during my father's funeral, and now I'm done." She looked like she was about to say something, but then she just collapsed onto the couch, clutching her head. Her sobs were loud and raw. I stayed in the doorway watching her, feeling the strange mixture of anger and relief. That was the moment I knew I couldn't go back. I had everything I needed. The pieces were in place. The only thing left was to act. The next morning I packed my belongings, prepared to leave her house for good. I took the keys from her hand, cold and firm. As I handed them over, I told her, "This is over. You made your choice." I left her standing there, stunned and broken. Walking out that door, I felt lighter, freer, even if my chest still ached. I'd done what I needed to do, no more hiding, no more pretending. I'd faced her, laid everything bare, and now I was finally taking control of my life again. That's when I knew this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming myself, and I'd never let her take that from me again. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I felt like I was walking through fog, clear-headed but emotionally drained. I filed the divorce papers, handed over all the evidence I'd collected, and made sure everything was documented. It was a clean break, as much as it could be. Still, I knew her reputation was in ruins and that she'd be scrambling to save whatever she could. I also made a point to block her on everything. No social media, no texts, no calls. I wanted to cut her out completely, to let the silence do its work. She'd have to face the consequences of her actions without my interference. It was strange, feeling both victorious and hollow at the same time. I'd taken back control, sure, but the pain of betrayal lingered. In the meantime, I started to reflect on everything. How I'd trusted her for so long, how I'd ignored the signs, convinced myself we were solid. I kept going over moments when I'd brushed off her odd behaviors, her evasions. I realized I'd been so eager to believe in us that I ignored the cracks, big enough to swallow us whole. One thing was clear: I'd been nothing but naive. But that realization also made me stronger. I was finally seeing her for who she really was, someone willing to betray the one person who loved her unconditionally, just to indulge her own selfish needs. I felt a rush of anger every time I thought about her sneaking around, lying in my face, pretending to be the person I'd trusted. Still, I knew I had to move forward. I couldn't keep dragging this around. I started focusing on myself, therapy, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, even trying new hobbies to rediscover who I was outside of that toxic relationship. It wasn't easy, but I refused to let her define my future. One night, I had a moment of clarity. I was sitting in my apartment, feeling the ache in my chest, when I realized what I had to do next. I needed to send her a final message, one that would close this chapter decisively. No more exchanges, no more regrets, just a statement of finality. So I drafted a simple message. I told her I knew the truth, that I'd decided to move on, and that I'd never forgive her for what she'd done. I made it clear there was no turning back. I hit send, then immediately felt a strange weight lift from my shoulders. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was reclaiming my life. The betrayal still haunted me, but I was learning to live with it. I was starting to see a future beyond the pain, beyond the loss of trust. Looking back, I realized that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about taking control, about refusing to be a victim anymore. I may have lost a lot, but I gained something more important: myself. Now, I just have to keep walking forward, one step at a time, and remember that trusting someone isn't about blind faith. It's about knowing when to walk away when they betray that trust. I'm still healing, still piecing myself back together, but I know one thing for sure: I'll never let someone's lies destroy me again. A few weeks have gone by since I handed her the keys and officially ended things. Honestly, I still feel that ache in my chest sometimes, like a dull reminder of everything that happened. But I also feel a strange sense of relief, like I finally exhaled for the first time in ages. The weight of betrayal is still there, lingering like an aftertaste I can't quite wash away, but I'm standing taller now. I've been doing a lot of thinking about trust and how fragile it really is. I used to believe that love meant never questioning, never doubting. Turns out, real love requires honesty on both sides, something she clearly couldn't give. I used to think I knew her, but now I see that sometimes the person we trust the most is the one who can hurt us worst. I've learned that revenge isn't about tearing someone down just to feel better. It's about reclaiming your dignity and making sure the other person knows they crossed a line. For me, that was about showing her I'd had enough, that I wouldn't be fooled again. Watching her unravel, knowing I had the proof, was a power I never imagined I'd feel. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about justice, my justice. Looking back, I realize I was a fool to ignore the signs, to dismiss the little red flags that popped up here and there. But now, I see those signs clearly. My takeaway is that trusting someone means giving them your heart, but also being prepared to walk away if they betray it. No one should ever make you doubt yourself or your worth, no matter how much you love them. I'm not perfect and I don't claim to be. I still have days when I feel angry or sad, but they're fewer now. I'm rediscovering who I am outside of her shadow. I've started reconnecting with friends, taking care of myself, and yes, even smiling again. That's what matters, the small victories, the moments when I realize I'm healing. So if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: trust is precious but fragile. Protect it, nurture it, but never ignore the signs that someone might be deceiving you. And if they do, if they lie, cheat, or betray, remember that you're stronger than they think. You can rebuild, you can move on. And sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away, knowing you're better off without them. Because in the end, the only person you truly owe honesty to is yourself. And no lie is worth risking your peace of mind.